Hello and welcome to the Inquisitorial Archive. My name is Kevin O'Rourke and today I'm going to be reviewing the Inner Sea campaign setting for Pathfinder, published by Pathfinder Games. I have to admit, I remember seeing some reviews other people have done about them. Some people, everyone's showing different perspectives on it. It's like nice to hear different people's perspectives. But here about it, you know, this sounds pretty cool in order, and I have not regretted for a second the money I spent on this book. There's not much rules in here. There are a few rules, but what's, you know, they made such a nice world here, and there's lots of different quite unique countries. And it's not like when I was looking at stuff like Forgotten Realms and things, you end up seeing like, yeah, you got this coast and you got like interesting places like Tain and stuff, but they're all dealt with to larger degrees in different books. But they kind of gave every area an equal showing that's detailed in this book. Like they're showing all in the core bit, you've got a lot of different worlds. Sorry, a lot of different countries with a lot of different things. They have a nice section on races. You got a whole bunch of different human races. So you went to some cool guys like the Aslanti. That's some really cool ancient guys. What's happened with the world is there was a horrible the Aslanti they were fighting with the serpent folk, which I haven't dug enough into the background. I'm not actually exactly sure what the serpent folk are. They sound a bit like maybe Yuan-Ti, but I'm not certain yet. But their civilization was, they've never been met again by the humans. Like the power level they had, it sounds like they had spaceships and things like that. These guys were really up there. They, you know, they using magic and stuff. They had spaceships and things like that. But unfortunately, when they were fighting the serpent folk realized they're not going to beat them, and they cast a spell and they summoned up this huge comet which crashed into their capital city, which basically made a big crater, and you've got this area where the Inner Sea campaign saying would change everything, and you know, the top civilization amongst mankind went down and everything went to hell. But you've got a bunch of different races, so you've got different cultures and things, and these aren't defined by wars. They say, well, like, okay, these guys are off around here, these guys are off around here. But rather than just having, by and large, there's no mechanical difference, but it gives you more of an idea for cultural things, which is quite important, as opposed to in other settings like Forgotten Realms, you got your Sun Elves and you got Drow and things like, no, you got a whole bunch of different types of humans. And it's pretty cool to you know, it kind of gives you a bit of extra inspiration. And if you're saying, oh, well, my guy's this guy and my guy's like this, you end up with you've got your standard basic your races, but with gnomes you do some amazing. Gnomes are extraplanar. Elves are also what appear at first glance to be extraplanar, but they deal with that more in another book. Gnomes come from like thousands of years ago, came from a sort of a fey plane, but they have additional rules that they just make a test every year. Depending on how exciting life has been for them. If they fail these tests, they start losing, I think it's wisdom. And eventually if it goes down to 0, if they fail enough these tests, their character either dies or they become just these unusual guys who are kind of dead inside to a degree. It seems kind of interesting. I don't really like the Fey version of gnomes you get in many settings. I prefer the kind of crazy technological guys. I find that a bit more interesting than the Fey versions. Like, for example, World of Warcraft, you get the crazy tech guys, and as well then like in Dragonlance. I love the gnomes in Dragonlance. Just don't do it for me. Halflings in some of the countries are actually kept as you know, they're a slave race kind of a thing. But when you go through the book, they have a big section detailing on how things work. But eventually, mankind started to recover, and they have this place known as the Starstone, where if you journey into the Starstone, as a lot of people try to by various means, and just because it worked for one guy doesn't mean it'll work for other guys. In case your PCs decide we're going to go in there, which, you know, you should kind of discourage them. You know, unless you actually want to go, you know, I've got something prepared, and the horrors of the Starstone. Occasionally guys come back out, and when they do, they become gods. You've got Arden, I think, was one of the first of them. These are mortals becoming gods, because they had the gods from way back, you know, all the different guys. But what's really cool is that you end up with Arden came out, and you got some other guys like Iyomade, who used to be one of his paladins. She came out and she was our demigod kind of thing. And Arden was basically, there was this big prophecy that Arden would come back And when he did, like, he would come back to the realm of mortals after he descended to godhood. And at the prophesied hour, he would come back and lead mankind into a new golden age, and they would basically get back to the heights of his land and even higher. So like, okay, yeah, this is really cool. And everyone was like really, you know, motivated about it. And then at the anointed hour, Aradin the god was killed. The hope for humanity was killed. And basically, everything has to slide again. You got to get the nation Taldor, which is really hoping, like, yeah, you know, we're the most prominent human nation now. We're the most, you know, widely spread human nation now that we know of. You know, when these guys come, you know, when Aradin comes back, surely he'll pick us to be, you know, but just started to slide down. For various other reasons, started to slide down. But it's pretty cool because they have a whole bunch of different nations. You're looking at over like 20 different nations. You end up with, obviously some of them are inspired by, or by like pseudo historical versions in places. Like you have Galt is a country where they're basically, they've broke away from Taldor and they've been unable to become stable again. They keep having revolutions and the new parties keep going, and it's gotten to the stage where everyone's paranoid. It's a chaotic neutral country, I believe, and everyone's paranoid about different things. But you've got these nations, and you've got some other nations like, you know, Taldor said it's like the Byzantine Empire towards the end, or even the Roman Empire towards the end, where you just have the borders have been pushed back so much, and a bunch of their states have broken away, and they're bitter, and they remember the days of glory because they were great and fantastic, and they can potentially get back there. That's where I'm going to set my my next Pathfinder game, Taldor, starting off. That's the starting point. Where's the player, if the players stick around and try and build it towards the future again, you know, we'll see. But you end up with other countries like Cheliax, who are very tied in with the lawful evil god of Asmodeus. These guys have come to prominence. Their nation was falling to anarchy. They came to prominence because one of their noble houses allied themselves with devils, lawful evil, and they managed to use this to rise up, and they're basically an extremely lawful nation. They're a lawful evil nation, and they create these guys called Hell Knights, which are not just there, but they're pretty cool. Where these guys, these knights, which don't have to be lawful evil, they can be lawful neutral. There's even some lawful good guys, but they style them. Their primary focus is being lawful, being disciplined, being that focused and that disciplined. And they've got a prestige class in the back of the book for it, which is pretty cool because these guys, they're styling themselves after the armies of hell. They're styling themselves after armies of hell, and they want to be that focused and that disciplined. And it's just cool. You end up with if you're looking for kind of a whatever kind of a setting you're thinking for, it's like, oh, I'd like to have this kind of place. They've got the 5 mountains, the 5 Kings Mountains, which is the dwarf's place, and there's some beautiful artwork in this. I love the artwork in this. The artwork generally in Pathfinder books is top notch, great stuff, and they don't recycle stuff too much, I found, which can be a bit annoying with some kinds of RPG books, but they do a very good job. You have such history here. There's lots of stuff to draw on, including there's a crazy place called Arisia, which it used to be part of another nation, but then this extra planar being Baba Yaga comes along, and she leaves some of her children to rule over this place, but she has the border, which are basically the old house and the chicken legs kind of type thing from Legend kind of thing, and there's a little doll sitting in each of these. If you actually are brave enough to go inside, you can see there's a little doll in each of these. But a knight, as Legend says, I think this is what I was saying, like, as knight, it's been a while since I've read that section, but at night the dolls come alive and they kill intruders into the realm of Baba Yaga. She basically went off and claimed, this is mine now. And in each section of the book, you got what alignments, what religions are quite popular there, kind of thing. And it goes on to brief history of the world, brief description of the government, and then it describes the basically places of interest, whether these be towns or locations where you can adventure. Whatever you want is here, basically. If you want to run certain types of campaign, there are niches that can suit. And what I really want to do is I want to have the guys, if they want to get associated with one nation, that's fine. But if they want to go out and explore, there's so many different nations which are really cool. You end up in places like I think it's Katapesh they do the, or one of the nations, I'm not going to start reading the whole thing out, but one of the nations, I don't think it's Katapesh, they have these things called sun orchids, which they can distill down, and there's a bunch of different city-states, and basically these can be sold off, and these extend your lifespan, extend your use, and these are obviously, they're so rare, but obviously there's people with money who are like, well, I don't want to, you know, these are really good. Each of the city-states takes it in turns to sell these, and that's how they make it, and their entire economies are built around these things because they've driven it so much towards the harvesting things, and each of them takes in turn to sell these. And representatives from governments all over Galarian come to bid on these, and occasionally these get stolen. But it's really cool to have that kind of type thing. You have Keonan, which is the place of the elves. The elves, as I said, they appear first glance to be extraplanar, but they're not. They disappeared after Aslant fell. They disappeared for thousands of years, but they came back when this demonic influence had started infecting some of their holies. They had only a small number left behind. So it kind of adds to the mystery that their entire race just left back through this gateway, this portal back to what apparently their home plane or dimension. But if you start looking at some of the other books, I think they kind of mentioned here too, is like, it's not actually their dimension. And some of them might believe fully that, yeah, no, they're from another dimension. Some of them might not, it depends. They originate on a world that is in the same solar system effectively. And it's pretty cool because they have it in here from the start. Yeah, no, there's other habitable worlds in the solar system. And I got a little supplement book that goes into more, they give you a little bit of details in this, but it goes into a bit more detail. It's a small book expanding on, I'll review that at a later stage, but I'm kind of liking that one so far. I'm still reading it. You end up with a cool situation where there's this whirlwind where demons are constantly spilling forth, and there's corruption going forth. It's not just having to fight the demons, they're spreading forth corruption and things. So basically nations have banded together, you know, at one stage they banded together and have this crusade. You have a lawful good dictatorship, this place called Last Wall, and they're trying to contain in this place, but some of the guys, you know, there's originally there's noble ideals and stuff, but they're starting to decay. You know, it's just great. I can't recommend this book enough to you. You're not getting huge sections of rules and things, but it gives you what to do. If you want to do more of a Viking type feel, the lands of Lenorm, or maybe even the River Kingdoms, might kind of appeal to you in that respect. Yeah, they basically they give little descriptions, like for the lands of Lenorm, they're describing as a frigid Viking homeland. And that kind of touches on it, but you've got all these cool different additional things. You've got the land of the Mammoth Lords. So if you want to do, I'll be honest with you, when I was talking about the other worlds, which in the setting, it's like, you know, you could do your game like John Carpenter or something like that, where basically your adventures go through a portal that then malfunctions. But on this world, you could go off. I love the idea of going off and you give them a template or whatever, because on this world, or even if you don't do that, you could scale the monsters and stuff differently. It's like, yeah, no, on this world, your humans are giants effectively. Everyone else is like, even if you went off and modified some worlds, or you're really tiny people, I know some worlds where they're, you know, most of the monsters and creatures are huge giant things, like insects are feet size, you know, several feet in length and stuff like that. And you could do really cool stuff there, like, you know, you're Superman because you're from this world, and you're from Galarian, and it's normal for your species to be like this, but in this world, you are these powerful heroes kind of thing. You could do an entire campaign like that, and maybe if they can find a way back home, maybe, you know, like Flash Gordon or John Carpenter or whatever, they decide, well, I'm needed here. If you develop enough roots, they might realize, you know, I shouldn't leave yet. Yeah, like I said, you got the realm of the Mammoth Lords, which is pretty cool things. So if you want to have your game kind of like that, what are the really? They've got some really cool places like the Mana Waste, which is a stretch of desert between two kingdoms where two powerful wizards are fighting each other. One of them has disappeared altogether. One of them is presumably dead. You got a cool thing going on there if you want to dig into it. And I was tempted to start a game where the guys were all from Aslant, but as I read more into it, I thought that's not really suitable. They actually have stats for true-blooded Aslant, because the Aslant, as you dig into it, they weren't normal. They're not normal bog standard humans. They have been changed. And instead of getting +2 to a stat of your choice, they got +2 to all stats across the board. They're extremely powerful. Just if what and Aradin himself was one of these guys who was perceived to be the last of the Aslant, but I still think you could have a cool game with those guys. But the Manaway guys, they're the guys who've developed guns in this setting. From Alkenstar Firearms, there was this guy who ran out, and he's, because magic doesn't work well in this area because so many spells are thrown in different things. Magic doesn't work terribly well in the area, so having these guns is really handy because of the wizard, and you end up with a lot of people who flee to this area because they're fleeing from a powerful wizard, and they know that the powerful wizard won't be able to use his regular means to go after you. And if third formation and things, you end up with cool places like the Mediogalti Island. This is where the famed Red Mantis assassins have their temple. This is where they train. This is the dead. Once more, you get a prestige class in the back of the book for them. But it's mostly, there's some pirate havens kind of things. But anybody walking around their main port, any person you talk to, everyone's polite, because anyone could be a Red Mantis in disguise. So everyone maintains a certain level of civility, which is pretty cool. Omar Thune is another one of my favourites, where they are a lawful and neutral nation, and they wish to expand, they wish to bring order, and they're right beside the chaotic good nation, who, near Mathis I think, who are like, there's no overall leadership. You have like village councils, and that's it. There's no, the nation of itself doesn't exist. They broke away from these guys, but they have rich, valuable lands. These guys are like, no, we're going to bring order to you, and they're like, no, screw you, we want to be free and independent, kind of a type thing. You have the Mwangi Expanse, where you end up with these super intelligent gorillas and stuff, which is pretty cool, because immediately I'm thinking like Gorilla Grodd from DC Comics, things like that. It's like, yeah, you've got some awesome stuff going on. I'm not even mentioning all the nations. I'm skipping past so many of them. But like there's Nidal, which is a kingdom where they're all in service to this one particular god who's really evil, and like I said, there's so much here you could do. Now, one of my favourites, a Numeria, which sounds suspiciously like Samaria to me, which is a savage land of super science, I would call it, chaotic neutral. And basically a spaceship had crashed centuries or thousands of years ago onto where this country now is. And there are weird, crazy pieces of technology. So if you want to go crazy with a place where there's loads of constructs or weird space technology, you know, you've got a cool picture here. You got a barbarian fighting. This much like it's barbarian kingdom, but they've got actual super science and technology, which I think is just so fantastic, that you can do stuff with this. They've got like, you know, they're trying to gather all this equipment, and this is the place where in this world, in Galarian, adamantine originates from, because it's fragments of this spaceship that crashed. And there's all of these places have built-in mysteries. There's Osirian, which is a nation which they're very Egyptian in style. Got some cool stuff going on there. You know, you've got Kadara Gateway to the East, which is very sort of Middle Eastern style. And if you want to do a game kind of like Lawrence of Arabia, something like that, it's perfect, because you got the Jinn and stuff like, you've got your Jinn and stuff like that. You end up with Rahadun, which is another cool place where basically I think they have like, they've got their portals, but it's like, okay, we've got our laws, different things, but they're sick of basically churches going to war and crusades and stuff. Like, you know, fine, we admit the gods exist, but we are sick of you guys coming in here destroying our stuff. So no, you are not allowed to practice religion. We're not having temples, we're not having any of that stuff. I might be misremembering some of this because it's been a while since I read this, but it's just beautiful stuff. Each of the countries has its unique personality and stuff. Rosemarie, another one of my favourites. Rosemarie, which I've mentioned sometimes in different things. Rosemarie is a nation which follows this one god who claims that, you know, he's ascended to god. The thing is, he's not a god. He's actually a high-level wizard. He didn't go through the Starstone. He didn't go through it. He set himself up as a god. He wears this mask so they don't see him aging, and he's got this crazy cult thing going on. A lot of people go into like, oh, I'll join the cult because if I join the cult, it increases my social status and stuff, and they go on like just to milk off of it. They come back changed. They come back as true believers. And he's slowly expanding his territory. You've got the River Kingdoms, which I was kind of seem a bit more Viking, Conan-esque to me, which is it's independent realms of low characters, how they describe it here. Just a little tiny little things that I kind of like is when you're flicking through, you go, oh wait, you know, you're gonna read it all. You probably will, because I just sat and I was reading this for so long. It's just got great stuff, but it has basically you've got a bunch of independent city states and townships and things like that. But you just have the rules that everyone sticks by here. Like, for example, it says, say what you will, I live free. Which they do as talk is cheap, and everyone is entitled to speak their own words. You can say what you want. But then they have as oath breakers die. Those who swear oaths, particularly those of fealty to a river king, and break them, can expect any number of painful and unusual deaths. And it got cool because like these are the common things that are generally upheld despite what everyone's gone to. Got Sargawa, which to be honest is Sargava, the lost colony, which it's, I think they're still I can't remember exactly what's it, but I think they're still loyal to Cheliax, the place, which are their followers of Asmodeus and things. But they're so far removed that Cheliax can't really do anything with them. And you end up just some crazy stuff going on, like after Arden died and stuff, and after the Starstone fell, some unusual things came into being, or after, you know, after these various events happened, they've all left scars in the world, you know, like the inner sea itself, and you end up with these areas where there are permanent storms and things. But because this has stopped people from going and looting much, it means that these are some of the last places where you can find relics of these things that haven't already been claimed, that they've been protected throughout the ages. Because this, you've got the Steaming Sea, which is pretty cool. You end up with there's a couple of different factions going there, like the Mordant Spirals, which are these crazy guys. But one of the groups I think is pretty weird, kind of cool, is there's this gold dragon, I believe. And he basically saw humanity. He sees humanity as like, humanity has so much potential, and he wants to help them achieve that potential. So he's effectively set up a eugenics program, and they actually go out and they have recruiters who go out and they recruit people that they see to be exceptional individuals to come back. But when you go there, you have to sign a document, and part of it is basically that you basically, because they all have to keep things working, you have to follow, you have to do what this gold dragon says, you know, that he can make choices for you. You're signing away on a certain level your freedom, like by but the thing is, and he's a dictator effectively, but he actually listens to people. But at the end of the day, it's his choice, but he's handling it pretty well. He's trying to be wise stuff. But sometimes they have people who want to leave because they've grown up in the setting, they're being rebellious and they want to leave and different things like that. But they've kind of got a sinister edge there where they don't particularly want people to leave. But although in public they'll say, oh yeah, you know, you can leave if you want, but you're gone then, you're not coming back. We can't have, you know, things going like this. But a lot of them just disappear. But because they don't have people coming back and forth, they don't notice. So you got a sinister edge there with them like that. And Taldor, where I'm going to set my game, the crumbling empire, which had conquered so much. And it's got Andor beside it and Galt beside it. And it's just got some interesting things. It was Tuvia. Tuvia is the place of the desert land of the eternal youth, where you've got loads of the Jinn and the Freef running around and stuff, and they're the ones who make the Sun Orchid. You just end up with some beautiful. Arisia is another cool one, which I think for certain types of game could work out really well, because there was a colony of these guys called Rune Lords who were basically kicked out of Aslan society, but they all went into some kind of magical sleep of some form or another, and they're starting to rise again now. You just have so much to draw in the book, but it leaves you room to deal with stuff as you wish. You know, if you like, obviously they go off and they've done a load of different books, and this is their default setting for it. They've got a load of different books, which can go into a lot of details. But with the main book, you can modify things and do them as you will. You know, you can do it in any game, but it's just they give you a lot of inspiration stuff that I wouldn't have thought of. There's just so much here. You've got the World Wound, which is a place, like I said, that's where the demonic hordes are spilling forth and they're starting to corrupt the whole area. You've got some lots of there. And then they have Beyond the Inner Sea, which I think is one of the coolest pictures of the book. You have a temple with monks, and they seem to be fighting off harpy women, and it's one epic grand battle, and everyone's just coming out with their kung fu and stuff. It's like, okay, that's cool. And they show a map of the world as a whole. And it's basically like, yeah, you're basically looking at this area here. This is what's detailed. They're like, they're leaving room for themselves to expand outwards. And they do talk about some of the nations that are further off to the east and the impact they've had, because sometimes they're these huge empires that are off in another place, and they've had some because they've set up a sailing expedition kind of type thing. And it details these in small details, and you can do them as well. And they have, like I said, they have a bit where they're talking about the different worlds in the solar system, and most of these are habited to one degree or another, and it's pretty cool. It gives you just a little bit of details in all these, so you don't need that Distant World supplement book, but it's got some Regar stuff in it, but you make of them what you want there. If you do want ancient portals that maybe the Aslant had set up a portal between here and somewhere else, and you find a working one, so you can go off and do this sort of stuff, or you find one of the portals the elves have set up, because the elves are from, is it Castrovel the Green? It might be. But what's pretty cool is just a little bit from the other book. They talk about, because this brings us some to cosmology, which is the next section moves into. They detail the Distant Worlds book that a lot of Galorians, astronomers like to call, you know, oh, Galorian the child, because all these different things, like there's Abalon the horse, because it goes so quickly around the sun. But some of the more serious astronomers are going on, yeah, we've looked into the history of stuff, and you know, we've gone off and from the brief contacts of some adventures have had with other worlds. That's not what they call us, because they're saying, oh, it's a child, because obviously it's got quite temperate environments, and it's quite an array, so obviously life's meant to go here. Like, they call it the cage, because of the formation of the world. There is a god called Rovagog, who is this horrible, evil god, and they encased him in the center of the world. And you've got some cool stuff going on. You have the gods in the core book, but they go into more details in them. Kael Caden is one of my favourites. He's a chaotic good god. And he was really drunk one time. He was a mercenary. He would only take up just causes, that kind of thing. But he was really drunk one time, one of his friends. And he got so drunk his friend convinced him that he should try and do the test of the Starstone. You know, the one where you probably don't come back, but if you do, you come back as a god. And he came back. He has no idea what the hell he did in there. He was that drunk. But he came back out as a god. So he's known as the drunken hero, and they detail the different main gods that you're talking about in the main book, and their alignments and things. Like Irori, the Master of Masters, is a cool guy. He's immortal, but he claims to have been immortal, but he didn't ascend to God through true use of the Starstone. He's like mastered himself so much, that kind of type thing. And you end up with, they've got other deities detailing out lesser deities and demigods, and they also basically looking on individuals that people often worship as gods, even though they're not technically gods. They're at a pretty powerful power level, so they're at least demigod level. So they start going into the archdevils, as well as demon lords, which various people worship. As well as this, they talk about, you know, some of the elemental gods, different things like that. And you also have philosophies in the book, which is pretty nice. You know, they're going off them things. I haven't read too much about them, not going to them. But then it talks about the cosmology, does a pretty good job, makes things interesting. What's just maps so you can get your head around it, but as to how much you want to bring into your game, that's up to you. But they have a nice section where they start detailing extra bits of gear and equipment. And one of the things I think is quite nice is that they go into stuff like, yeah, you don't have to use this much of it, but they come into the different names that they use for different gold coins in different countries. So, for example, in Cheliax, a gold piece is called a crown. In Andorran, it's called a falcon. It's like, okay. They talk about printing presses. Like, they've got some decent bits of technology in this world. It varies greatly on where you are. But they give big sections. What I really like is you end up with sections about these guys called Eagle Knights from Andor. The Hell Knights I talked about is like, here's a big section on Hell Knights, which is not the class. Like, it's not the prestige class. Like, here's a section just talking about the different orders of Hell Knights. And so they talk about Pathfinder Society, which is a great invention they had, where basically, I think you have to subscribe to it, and they send you out these modules and stuff. Or they send you. I haven't looked at it really, but from what I understand, they either send you out modules or they send you out, basically little volumes with information to inspire a game with information, and this is an ongoing kind of thing. But in world, it's this group of guys who go out and explore, but they're all in it for different reasons. But you get a couple of prestige classes. Then you end up with the Hell Knight itself, which is going to be separate. You've got these different guys. You've got Harrows. You get a few extra bits of equipment to start in the main book. There's like 4 or 5 prestige classes and a bunch of feats, which some of these are really cool. I like the Noble Scion feat. Depending on what type of house what type of noble family you are, you get these bonuses. The problem with it is, if one of the pieces is noble, sometimes other people aren't really in games. Sometimes people aren't really that respectful that somebody's character is a noble, and as well as that, it's not necessarily fun to have the noble constantly showing in your face. But they've got some very nice stuff here. They've got a dervish dance where you actually need ranks in dance, and you need weapon finesse, and you need dex of 13 and stuff. But you can actually use your dexterity modifier for damage with your scimitar. It's like, okay, that's pretty cool. You end up with a few extra bits of equipment which aren't in the core book. A lot of these are in ultimate equipment, but they put it in here so you have something to work with. That's the case with one. And they do put in firearms, which is handy because firearms are in the system. As we mentioned, the firearms are in the system in the mana waste. They do have that city which is producing them, and they keep the secrets of making like gunpowder and things to themselves and making firearms, but they do find their way into other places. So if somebody wants to just have a pistol and you don't have ultimate combat, so you don't have the gunslinger class, and you don't have all the extra guns in that from there, and you don't have ultimate equipment which also has guns, because you bought this, they were smart enough to actually go, you know, we have the basic guns here. You have 4 different types of guns. You got your pepper box, your pistol, your musket, and your cannon. These are the standard guns. A few extra bits of equipment. Quite nice stuff. And some additional spells and things. I can't recommend this enough. Oh, as well as this, I almost forgot to mention, you get a beautiful map in this huge thing, which shows off the world. I'm going to show you a second because I'll never get it on screen. But you get this wonderful, beautiful map. Like, this folds out further down. Like, this keeps going. Or no, it's not folded out properly. That's what I'm about. Yeah, this is what you get. I plan on laminating this, even though it's going to be really expensive, because I knew I'm going to be playing I'm going to be running multiple games of this throughout the years as they go by. Even if I change over to, you know, there's I'm not sure about D&D Next. I haven't entered into any of the stuff with it. But I'm still quite certain, even if I don't end up selling it on Glorian itself, I am going to have plenty of stuff to steal from this for adventures to mine as a resource. I cannot recommend this enough. This is a great one to actually pick up. If you're looking for a campaign setting and you're not sure, this is fantastic because it has, in a relatively decent amount of detail, it's got the different countries. You're only getting about 4 A4 pages on each country, but that's enough of a starting point for you to build from that place. Plus, you know what the neighbours are like, and you know if you want to have the players going around doing big explorations, going to see different areas, which I'd love to do in the game. If the players going for that, they might want to go for doing different things, but you've got that. You actually have, you're going to find a country here that like sparks your imagination. You go, oh my god, what if I ran a game like this? It's fantastic for that. Anyway, I've rambled on long enough. Thank you for any of you who are still with me, but I just really want to hammer home. This is so much to offer, and I've only scratched the surface with it. There's so much you can do. There's so much you can benefit from having this book. Even if you want to, there's a country here which suits the style of game you want to do. As well as this, I want to do a shout out for someone who's recently started doing episodes on YouTube. They're starting to recently put up videos. Ferry Ferris, I'll put the link down below. He does a view of the Pathfinder beginners box. He's new to role playing and he's new to GMing. He did his first session. I saw the video earlier today, and it's interesting to see his perspective. And you know, it's great to see different people's perspectives and things, because we're not always going to agree. But that's not the point. We've got some. I'm looking forward to seeing more of what he's doing, and he's going to run Pathfinder, and he seems to be very interested in role playing. He wants to go off and do the world. I did recommend to him to have a look at this, and hopefully he'll watch the video, and we'll see. He might find something else he prefers, but this is great stuff.